Welcome back to another episode of Out of the Wild Blue Yonder. I'm Mark Tate, and as always, I'm here with my good friend and co-host Luther King. So, how's everything going, Luther?
Hey, what's up, Mark? Things are great on my end. Football season is in full swing, and we've got a lot to catch up on.
Yeah.
So, what about those college football rankings after 2 weeks?
Hey, oh yeah, I tell you, it's been a pretty intense couple of weeks. The AP poll standings are very interesting. They're always dynamic week by week. And let's dive into those current rankings. At the top are the Georgia Bulldogs. They continue to dominate. They're ranked number one, but Texas sits at the second spot. And they put on some really strong effort last week during their game. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, Ohio State rounds out that top three. So you got some pretty strong teams that are going to pretty much dominate the rest of the season if they don't lose.
That's a true statement. Thankfully, our conference, the Southeastern Conference, is well represented in the
Right.
top 10 rankings. My team is sitting in the number 4 spot. We've got Ole Miss in the number 5 spot. We've got Missouri Tigers in the number 6 spot. We've got the Tennessee Volunteers in the number 7 spot. So again, SEC has strong representation.
That's right.
Then, of course, the Big Ten is pulling up the rear with Penn State in the number 8 spot and the Oregon Ducks that shift from the Pac-12 to the Big Ten, sitting in the number 9 spot. Then the ACC is closing things out with Miami in the number 10 spot, who's looking real good thus far through 2 games.
No, brother, I tell you, one thing that I'm really thinking is where's Clemson this year? Nowhere, nowhere. They're
Wow.
they're not in that top 10. I really thought Clemson was going to knock it out the ballpark. They played the other week against Miami, right? And
Yes.
I believe Miami beat the brakes off of them. So we'll
Yes.
see. We'll
Yes.
see if
Yes.
Clemson
Yes.
is able to come back up. And hey, this weekend's games are going to be looking pretty good, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've got some pretty good games coming up on this Saturday.
Yep.
Starting off with your team, Alabama,
Yes. Yes.
facing off
I
against
appreciate you. I
Wisconsin.
appreciate you sharing that. What is Alabama going to do this weekend?
Oh man, I tell you, your team is so strong though, and I am so surprised though because I
Yeah.
really thought it was going to be another rebuilding season for you guys with
Mm-hmm.
Nick Saban leaving. I really thought things
Yes.
were going to be in chaos. Now there are some pundits out there, Luther, who are saying that
Absolutely.
recruiting scheme that you guys had was because of Nick Saban, right? And
Yes.
so you guys are living off, if you will, the residuals of all that excellent recruiting that Saban and his team of coaches did. So
True. True. True.
I believe what the proof is going to be in the pudding here in the next couple of years as to how dominant Alabama is going to remain, right?
True statement. True statement.
And I'll tell you, my Auburn Tigers, they never fail to disappoint me. So you tough loss against Cal the other
Yeah,
week.
it
I
was.
think it was 14-21. Really disheartening for me. There's a crucial game coming up here as we
Yep.
face off against New Mexico. New Mexico's 0-2.
Yep.
It's a must win for Auburn. And if we don't, then there's going to probably be a lot of people talking a lot of smack about our new coach, well, Hugh
Yep.
Freeze, on the plains. Now, he's got talent. He's a talented person,
Yes.
excellent coach. So we'll
Mm-hmm.
just see if he's able to weather through this storm of the next couple of games and get the team charted on the right path for success and future victories.
I know that was a tough loss for Auburn against Cal. Folks were saying, hey, they were getting their revenge from Auburn beating them last year. So
Yeah.
I'm excited to see this new battle between the East Coast, or the
Yeah.
Southeast and the West Coast, Auburn and Cal playing. So hopefully they'll keep this series going
Yeah.
and we'll see what it turns into. So again, big game coming up for them this week. But I'm not too concerned for them. I hope you are either. Both of our teams are in the Southeastern Conference. So we,
Right.
as the old
Yeah.
saying goes, any given Saturday, your team could lose
Yeah.
in the SEC, especially once they get into conference play, because it's just such a strong and dominant conference. All the teams bring their A game.
Yeah.
When they're playing against the teams, from the state of Alabama, whether it's Auburn or Alabama, they're going to bring their A game because they want to beat those two teams. It
Right.
just gives them bragging rights. So,
That's right.
hey, we both got our hands full, but at the
Yep.
end of the day, it's all about roll tide.
Hey, and War Eagle, I just have to say that, no doubt about it. I do have to give you the respect where it's due. You guys have not missed a beat with Alabama, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm hoping Auburn can recover and I can yell War Eagle and actually put my flag out in front of my house. I haven't done that yet this
Hey,
year.
do it. Go
And
ahead and do it. Do it, man. Represent your team. Be proud.
yeah.
Be
Yeah, that's
proud.
probably what I'll end up doing,
Yep.
and we'll see in the next couple of weeks if I'm taking that back down again or not. Now, not that I'm a fair weather fan, but sometimes
Yeah.
it's kind of embarrassing when you
I hear
have
you. Hey.
huge losses, right? Oh man, I tell you, I know that we're going to continue throughout the college football season talking
Yes.
about college football. We never really touch on pro ball, that much, but
Yeah.
I'm seeing some impressive things about some of the pro teams out there. We'll maybe
That's a
save
true
that
statement.
for next episode. We can dive in a little bit and talk about the pro teams that are out there
Hey,
too.
hey,
You
I'm
know,
all about it. Like I
yeah,
say, we're just really getting into the season
yeah,
for football, period.
yes,
But some great games. Week 1 on the NFL. Again, I'm just a football fan, so I try to fill my weekends when I can
yeah,
with just football nonstop. So nonstop until hunting season starts. And of course, then I have to start transitioning to mobile.
yeah.
Sitting in the tree stand trying to keep up with what's happening on the game, depending on what time of day it is. But that's just what I got to do. But right now I'm
Yeah,
just getting my feel on football. So I'm looking forward to the Thursday night game tonight. If I'm not
yeah,
mistaken, it's going to be Miami or Buffalo at Miami. So Buffalo's
yeah,
traveling down to Miami. So they've got to play in that heat and humidity. So we'll
yeah.
see what happens, but big battle.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good game. I'm looking
I think
forward to
so
watching
too.
that one too. And
Yep.
and so now it's time for us to switch gears and talk about our main topic for today, which is
Yes.
Squadron Command. We're going to talk about the first year of that Squadron Command, like from days 61 through 365. So
Yep.
let's get into it.
Yep. Absolutely. We're gonna pick this thing up. This is part 2 in the series. So we're gonna cover everything after those first 2 months of command
Yeah.
and taking you through the end of that first year. So again, I'm going to kick things off and keep it with the theme from the last episode. We kind of broke it up into 10 tips, what we call success tips. We're going to do the same in this episode. So I'm going to cover 1 through 5, and Mark's going to cover 6 through 10. But these are just some suggestions or tips, strategies for success as you're looking at, that first year of command. So the first one I'm going to start with today, and we kind of touched on it in the first part, was continuing to build relationships or building relationships. So we talked about this earlier, establishing those critical relationships, not only with your fellow squadron commanders within your group, but also your counterparts in your, sister groups or opposing groups. So more than likely we're talking to logistics readiness officers. So,
Mhm.
your counterparts in the maintenance group, your counterparts in the operations group, you need to build those relationships as well. So if you're in an aerial port squadron, then you absolutely should be working with your counterparts in the operations group, particularly OSS, the Operational Support Squadron, where you're dealing with standing valve, because the load masters are working closely, with your area porters and ATOC getting an aircraft loaded. So the better ties and relationship you have with them, the easier it'll be to avoid any potential delays or conflicts or finger pointing. And I know there's another aspect, building that relationship. Mark, can you briefly touch on that?
One of those things is what we used to call the bro network.
Mm,
You have a lot of company grade officers that are part of your squadron. And so they have relationships with other company grade officers within the entire wing. So one of the things that you need to ensure is that your company grade officers are also speaking and talking and interacting with company grade officers from other squadrons and groups. That's going to pay a lot of dividends for you as you maintain those relationships. It's very, very important because a lot of the work is done where at the CGO level, that's where the
yes.
rubber meets the road. So it's important for you as a squadron commander to identify that and to capitalize on those relationships that are being built at that level.
That is perfect, Mark. I appreciate you adding that piece in. Bro Network,
Yeah,
absolutely work it. Leverage
yeah,
your CGOs in your squadron to work that network.
yeah,
The second one we want to touch on is sustaining and adjusting your goals. So again, we talked about setting some of those initial goals as you're coming into command. Now you're 2 months in. You've got several months in the rearview mirror, now you can kind of see a little bit more clearly. You're starting to get your sea legs,
Right.
figure out how things are working, get your battle rhythm down. So at this stage, it's essential to review the goals you've set in those first 60 days. The operational environment may have changed and the squadron's
Yeah.
priorities may have shifted, based on higher headquarters directives. So, it's all about being flexible. As we like to say in the Air Force, flexibility is the key to air power.
Right.
So definitely be flexible and adjust these goals, stay aligned with the mission, with higher headquarters requirements. The third tip is monitoring the squadron's health and morale. A important topic, something you should absolutely be dialed into. And this is a perfect time to really start peeling it back and figuring out, okay, hey, how is the health of my squadron? How is the squadron doing? Hopefully you came into a situation where when you took command, the health of the squadron was strong, or the morale was up,
Yeah.
but you could be encountering a situation of squadron to where the morale is down. They may have had some negative situations or consequences they had to deal with. Hey, and morale is down. They've got a new commander on deck and they don't know what to expect. So this is a perfect time to take that quick pulse of how things are going. Obviously check in with your chief, your first sergeant, talking with your flight commanders, and just really getting a pulse of how things are going. And this may be a perfect opportunity for you to, hey, set the tone. If you're a fun and outgoing person, hey, what events can we put on to pull the squadron together, to potentially boost morale right now? Take advantage of any morale funds that may be available to your squadron. If you need to throw a quick pizza party,
Yeah.
a barbecue, trip to the bowling alley, whatever it may be, always be thinking about things you can do to boost the morale of your organization, as you're taking a pulse of how things are doing. And don't just wait till when morale is down. You should always be trying to keep the folks motivated within your squadron. But definitely as you're facing strenuous situations, like if you've got a inspection of some sort coming up, I know you've been working hard, you've been grinding, preparing, try to carve out some time to give the folks a breather. So that's another perfect opportunity to take advantage of, a morale event of some sort to just boost the spirits of the folks within your
Yeah.
organization.
Yeah, absolutely, Luther. And I was also going to mention around this time frame, somewhere between the first 60 days and the
Mm-hmm.
first 365, you're going to be approached more than likely by someone in the wing offering up a unit climate assessment. And so take advantage of that opportunity. Definitely have that within your organization. It's going to help you gauge the temperature of your organization to see how morale really is. In some conversations that they have, those folks who are providing that assessment they have with the individuals, of course, all this is confidential, but some of
Mm-hmm.
those conversations will probably illuminate some issues that are going on within your squadron. And I always found that to be very, very helpful for myself.
Oh, well said. So as I transition to number 4, we kind of talked about partnerships and building relationships earlier in tip 1. And you'll see that's always going to be a theme with me because it's something that I'm just going to continue to foot stomp and echo because I know it has
Right.
paid huge dividends for me, in really every aspect of life. So for number 4, we're really talking about those external partnerships. So again, I did touch on some of these earlier. I kind of blended them together. My bad. Hopefully I didn't confuse you all. Um, but I'm thinking about a civil engineering squadron commander right now, or I'm thinking about a security forces squadron commander. And just to give you an example of an external relationship. So security forces squadron, they typically have an existing relationship or partnership with local law enforcement. So they've got their boundaries and responsibilities to, a certain part of the gates exit, they made their boundary may potentially go a little bit further into the street. It just depends, you know. So if an accident or something were to occur there, or an incident of some sort, hey, there needs to be a strong time relationship with local law enforcement. Or if they need to respond on to base for an incident, God forbid, you need to have those strong ties and relationships. And the same thing for the civil engineering squadron from a firefighting standpoint, having that existing relationship with your local fire departments. and any other organizations outside, that you may have to work with on a routine basis. The sooner you can establish ties and relationships with them, the better. And the last one I'll kind of touch on, I'm trying to think of the name of the program that it was called, but essentially honorary squadron commanders. Honorary
Yes,
squadron commanders, so
important.
hopefully you have strong ties with the civic leaders, within your city or your area. So this is a perfect opportunity if your squadron does not have an honorary squadron commander program, or if the base has an established one, just a tip or suggestion, to get after it, try to establish one.
Right.
But make sure you touch bases. If you have one, you have an honorary squadron commander, touch bases with them. Make sure you're bringing them onto base, getting to know them, developing that relationship, just to build those civic ties, with the local community. Maybe an opportunity to open some doors, for you and your squadron to have an additional opportunity to volunteer or go do something different outside the gate.
That's right.
But it's just a great way to build those external partnerships and relationships.
And one thing to add on that is that those external relationships, as Luther mentioned, are very important. Public affairs, typically on the installations, they're the ones that handle that squadron commander relationship with the honorary squadron commander. So tap into public affairs. And also, by the way, make sure you're sending up those stories so public affairs can put those on the website to talk about your external relationships and things that you're doing out in the community. They really love that stuff. So please take that into account as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mark. Hey, moving on to number 5. Number 5 tip um, is engaging in professional development. So throughout your career, your leaders have taken the time to help develop you into the leader that you are now. Now you're sitting in a, no kidding, serious leadership position to where you're a commander. You have folks that you're rating on. You have junior officers that you're responsible for. You have enlisted members that you're responsible for. So this is a big deal. I mean, I just can't overemphasize the importance of the leadership responsibility that you've been entrusted with. You need to take it seriously, and you need to do your part to develop your folks. So establishing a professional development program within your squadron is something that you could easily do and take advantage of. I know there are other organizations out there like the Company Grade Officers Council, the Top Six. There are other organizations for folks in your squadron to get development, but this is an opportunity for you personally and individually to put a program in place, so techniques that have been done before that have been successful, you could have a book reading of some sort. So you select a book that resonates with you, leadership focused or whatever. You could go the extra mile and potentially buy copies, for the officers in your organization, give them a copy of the book, and you guys get together and talk about, reading the book, going through it, breaking it down. So that's just one example of professional development. You can also take trips as an organization. So if you're a logistics organization, you're in a coastal town or city, you should absolutely be taking your folks down to a seaport, if there's one there, or a cross dock operation, so just taking advantage of, civilian logistics operations that you can introduce, your military organization to, just to give them some additional professional.
Absolutely. Those are all great points, Luther. And those first 60 days are all about setting that foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So let's start building on that foundation. I'll
Yes.
pick up with tips 6 through 10, and we'll dive a little bit deeper in some of these as well. So the first thing that is important is for you always to evaluate your performance metrics, right? By now, at this point, you have an understanding of what's important to the organization, what's important to higher headquarters as far as what you are sending up as form of a metrics or a report card, if you will. This is what you are going to be using to make those informed decisions and what you're going to be using to make sure that the mission continues to move out in the way it's supposed to. This data will guide your strategy as you continue to move forward. One of the things that you have to look at, though, is there's sometimes when you may need to replace one of the metrics that's been reported up to higher headquarters. You have to do that through formal channels, but it may make sense to replace one metric with a different one that you're already tracking anyway. We're not talking about necessarily reinventing the wheel, so to speak, but we're also talking about taking a real close look at what your operation is doing at this point in time. There were some things maybe put in place a couple of years prior that were important at that time, but you have to keep in mind that you're looking for the present and moving towards the future. So you want to evaluate those performance metrics for the time that you're in right now.
Hey, the
Um,
only thing I'll add, Mark, again, we got this thing going on here. We're just going to piggyback on each other's
yeah,
comments, because
for
again, we've
sure.
got just tons of experience that we can share with folks.
Hmm.
And I kind of touched on this earlier, talking about those performance metrics, not only for your organization, but don't forget about, the metrics, that your boss may be using to measure your performance as a leader. We talked about,
Yeah.
just the level of responsibility that has been entrusted with you. So you are being measured as well, because you have to be successful, in leading this organization because the mission cannot fail. So just make sure you understand how you're being measured, how you're being evaluated, how you're being rated, and how you're being measured against your peers. So I talked about evaluations, your
Yes.
EPR and OPR, timeliness. We talked about physical fitness standards for your squadron. How does your squadron compare to X, Y, and Z squadron?
Mhm.
Um, those are just examples, just a couple of examples of things that you could consider, your scorecard or your report card on how you're being evaluated compared to your fellow squadron commanders. When that group commander has to, make an assessment, okay, who's my number one squadron commander, number two, number three, or whatever, my number 105, they have to have a system in place, to be able to make that assessment. So those are just two examples of things you're being potentially measured against to do that comparison. And there are other things, but those are just two I want to highlight, in the time that we have.
That's very important, Luther. And I really appreciate you for chiming in to provide that information to everybody that's out there listening. You can't foot stump it enough. You've got to always think about how you're going to be evaluated, how your organization is going to be evaluated as well.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. Thank you. The next thing that I'll take a look at is how are you going to encourage innovation within your
Mm.
organization? The longer you're in command, the more that you'll notice some areas that could be benefited by these updated processes. Something that's so small in some cases, can make a huge impact on the organization. So you're going to always want to be on the lookout for that and promote that innovation. And more importantly, you're always going to be wanting to give the folks that are under your command the freedom to provide you with solutions. You're
Yes.
gonna you're gonna encourage that. You're gonna encourage that innovation, whether it just be some a box that's sitting at the end of a hallway with an idea, an idea box, or if it's an open forum where you solicit ideas in other ways, you want to definitely do that because your personnel should definitely feel that they are empowered to contribute positively to the organization's success. So that's one of the key things that you want to do throughout your command. Doesn't matter if it's day one or day 651. You always want to make sure that you're promoted that innovation. The other thing, oh, do you have anything for us, Luther?
Yeah, I do,
Yeah,
Mark.
hey, come on. Yes, yes.
Hey, I'll leave you with this, short little statement. Leave it better than you found it. So if you truly take that to heart when you're coming into command or to in any organization, staff assignment, if you say, hey, my goal is to leave this organization, leave this job better than I found it, then innovation is going to be a part, of your mantra. I mean, you're going to get after it. You're going to find ways to try and make it better because that's your ultimate goal is to leave it better than you find it. So just reminiscing real quick, thinking back,
Yeah.
to some of the, opportunities I had when I was in Squadron Command, to take advantage of Lean Six Sigma processes, so in the logistics or maintenance operation, we have processes that we have to go through that are meticulous. They're broken down into steps. So it's a perfect opportunity to apply, Lean Six Sigma type processes to lean out any waste in those processes. Because again, a lot of them are driven by time, restrictions. time categories to where, hey, we've got to have this step done by this specific amount of time. And if it takes 12 steps, okay, how do we wean out or eliminate any waste in that process to be able to get that process not only done on time, but potentially earlier or sooner? Can we shorten the amount of time it takes to get that process done, taking into account, safety at all times, so it's all about getting the job done safely. But if we can make that process more efficient by eliminating some of that waste, then the better off we'll be. And again, that's what the innovation is all about. So looking for ways to leave the organization better than you found it.
Roger that. And, I agree with you, of course, 100% on that. The other thing, too, is you can actually seek out some other experts throughout the wing that deal with this Lean Six Sigma. There may be a black belt around the wing somewhere, and bring them
Yes.
in and have
Yes.
them facilitate a session in your squadron, where you identify these things that you can possibly improve, where you're looking at maybe a 15-step process, but maybe you want to whittle that down to 12 steps or even less, because it just makes sense to do that. And so you don't have to walk out there alone and think that you're going to be the person with the idea, the facilitator, and also the one that's trying to push the execution of that idea. You've got within your organization a team of subject matter experts and also external folks that you can bring in to help you do that. So that's great input, Luther, and I'm glad it triggered that thought in my mind about that as well. So it's really good stuff. And as you improve your process, you promoted this innovation, that you always want to make sure that your organization is ensured for their readiness. They want to be as ready as they can be to make the mission happen. And that includes to be ready for inspections and ready for any audits that are going to come about. We talked at one point earlier
Mm-hmm.
in one of the previous sessions about taking a look at what are the upcoming audits or what are the upcoming inspections that are on the docket for your organization. The key is to stay ahead of these inspections by ensuring that your squadron is always inspection ready.
Yes.
You want to conduct those internal audits and mock inspections within your organization, and you want to have that QA office. If you don't have a formal QA office, you want to create a tiger team of some sort to really take a look at all of your processes, and you want to remain proactive, because this is going to mitigate any kind of stressful situation to where you're up against the wall. You only got 2 weeks before this big inspection or this major audit comes along, and you're trying to fix all these things. Now, I would tell you, based on my personal experience, if you're 2 weeks out from an audit and you're trying to fix things, then you've already lost that battle, because the auditors, they're probably going to look back 2-3 years
Absolutely.
from that time. So, and there's no such thing as finger pointing and saying, well, I wasn't here when that occurred and I'm fixing it now. Yeah, you can do that. And auditors, they'll probably give you a little thumbs up. But at the
Mm-hmm.
end of the day, all of that rests on your shoulders, because when you took that guide on, you took on all that responsibility. So,
Yes.
so the problem is now yours. No matter if it was started or perpetuated years ago, that problem is now yours to deal with.
Yep. Hey, only thing I'll add on to that topic is it never hurts to have a second or third set of eyes. And
Yeah,
what I
that's
mean
right.
by
That's
that
right.
is, yeah, you've got your internal squadron, quality assurance section or flight. Yeah, you've got the wing IG inspector general program. Hey, but what about taking advantage of one of those relationships you have with one of your sister squadrons and
Yes.
get their standing vow of quality assurance flight, or ask your counterpart, hey, can you send 2 or 3 people over here and take a look at this specific program for me, just to get a fresh set of eyes or perspective on how you think we're doing. These 2 individuals have potentially no clue or idea about how this program is supposed to be run or operated, but they can look at that checklist and they can make an assessment, that may not be, I guess I'll use the term jaded,
Yeah,
for lack of a better term. But again, I think it's just a fresh set of eyes and a fresh perspective,
that's right.
um, that you may gain something from. So that's an insider tip right there. Go above and beyond, your QA and what the Wing IG is doing for you. Bring in a fresh set of eyes from one of your social squad.
Luther, that is fantastic. It makes me think of a story. Years and years ago, I was a
Mm,
squadron commander. We were facing an inspection. We hadn't been inspected in about 5 years. All the burden of that inspection was going to be on my shoulders and the other squadron members, And so
Yeah.
we realized at that point, like you say, we had to bring in somebody else or another group of people. And so what we did actually is we had a fellow squadron commander from the LRS at another installation within the state. I was stationed in Alaska, and we actually brought in some folks TDY from that LRS to take a look at our processes. And I would tell you, it made us so much money, so to speak, that it is probably what saved us from a really, really embarrassing inspection, and we were able to identify some things. And this was months before the formal inspection was supposed to, occur. So we were able to identify those things internally with the help of those folks, and we were able to fix quite a few things and processes before the actual inspection occurred. So thank you very much. Another trigger, another memory,
Yes.
that I experienced. I'm sure you have probably experienced some similar things as well, right?
I love it. This is good.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And along with those inspections and those audits, you're always going to have some powerful performers. So recognizing those outstanding performers and rewarding that excellence, you're going to always have people that will go the extra mile, not because they want to get all the fanfare and the glitz and glamour, so to speak, but because
Mm-hmm.
that's just what they do. You want to recognize those folks because they're high performers, and you don't want to wait until the end of the year to recognize all their contributions in an EPR or whatnot. You want to recognize them as soon as you can, so that other people can see that these people are your star performers and they're working hard. And it will likely encourage others to work hard as well. You'll be surprised what a simple thank you, a handshake, and a squadron commander's coin will do for the morale of those people who are working hard, and also for the motivation of those people who just need to step their game up a little bit too. It can go a long way, just making those folks feel very valued, and in my experience, we had a couple of tough runs with some things, and we had people really solving some hard problems for us. And so my chief master sergeant, he came to me one day and said, "Hey, we want to recognize these folks. You think we can get an achievement medal for all this hard work that they've done?" And I said, "Hey, absolutely. Let's give it a go. Let's go up to the group commander." We wrote out the awards, and that same day we went up to the group commander, explained to him the situation, and he signed off on those achievement medals. You would be surprised how much that boosted morale in the organization, because the normal process for an achievement medal takes months sometimes,
Yes.
and
Yes.
most people look at that as just a PCS award for outstanding, troops that are airmen. But if you can identify those star performers and they truly merit that award, you can actually give that without having to have them PCS or having an extended tour decoration or whatnot. So that's one of the things that you can do for them. Goes a long way. And so lastly, what I want to talk about is reflecting and refining your leadership style. You know, this includes that offsite that you should be thinking about midway in your first year of command. You should start thinking about having a squadron offsite with your key leaders where you can identify problems, you can identify some initiatives that you want to do, and also that you can do some planning for morale and welfare as well for your squadron. So as the year progresses, you want to be reflecting about your leadership style, and you want to be able to look at your successes and also your shortcomings or your blind spots as well. It's going to be very important that you do that, because it's going to allow you to kind of reset the clock and do better. It's,
Yes.
it's all about better performance at the end of the day, especially when you have that offsite and you allow people to wear those different hats. You're going to have people that have a white hat on. They're going to be the people with, great ideas. They're going to be people that you need to be the black hats in the organization too, to question some things that you have going on in your current processes or some proposals for your future processes. So that offsite, from my perspective, was always critical in order for us to develop a way forward for the upcoming year, and it allowed us to remain laser focused on what lied ahead for us with those different perspectives.
Those were some outstanding tips, Mark. I think the folks are really going to benefit
Yeah.
from this series.
Right.
First 60 days, that's your foundation. That's laying the
Mm-hmm.
groundwork. But what you do between days 61 and the end of that first year will set the tone for the
Yes.
rest of your command. It's going to set the tone definitely for that second year. And taking
Mm-hmm.
advantage of things like an offsite to not only look at, okay, where have we come from?
Mm-hmm.
What can we do better? What are some refinements we need to make? And let's chart a course, for this last 365 days, you cannot go wrong. And as
That's
Mark
right.
mentioned, take the folks off base, get outside your squadron, put on some civilian clothes,
Yeah.
let the folks wear those different hats, the white hats, the black hat,
Yeah.
red hat. You're going to have
Yeah.
naysayers too, but
Yeah.
you should welcome that as a part
Mhm.
of that diverse conversation that you want to have about, making the squadron better and charting a course forward.
That's right. Luther, I tell you, I believe that we came up with a lot of great content for folks in dealing with that 61 through 365. So I'm all excited. As you can see, I'm fired up about it. I'm looking forward to the next few episodes where we go into the deeper parts of the
Yes.
second half of your command, that next year that you have to look forward to. So with that, I think we've wrapped up our main topic,
Yeah.
and it's time for us to transition right into the health and wellness tip, right?
Yes, it is. Hey, and this week, the tip that we want to talk about is focused on cortisol,
Yeah.
often referred to as that stress hormone.
Yeah, that's right. And cortisol is released by the adrenal glands in response to any kind of stressful situation. It's actually essential for your
Mhm.
body's response in those situations. But, those elevated levels in prolonged periods can cause harm instead of good. They're the fight or flight instincts that you have,
Mhm.
but if you're at that high level all of the time, then you can have some problems physically and also mentally.
Well, you're spot on, Mark. When cortisol levels are too high for too long, it can lead to a host of problems such as weight gain, especially around the midsection for folks like us, for males and even for females.
Right.
It could lead to sleep issues, sleep disturbances. It could lead to anxiety, and even a weakened immune system. You could find yourself getting sick more often, because your cortisol levels are too high. So again, being dialed in, understanding how cortisol, that hormone, stress hormone affects your body.
Yeah, it sure is, and one plug here to talk about meds. Meds are important for helping level you out, but the goal here is for you all and for us as we progress in our career to not have to take so many meds for things that we can do naturally, that we can
Hmm.
reduce those stress levels, and first of all, instead of taking something to reduce your stress, how about trying meditation, yoga, and deep breathing? These things will actually lower your stress naturally. So that's the key. That's what we're focused on. Getting away from the meds, staying away from so much caffeine, so to speak.
Hmm.
To try to get through the day, but being able to take those miniature timeouts when you can in order to reset and level out that stress and anxiety in your life.
I'm definitely a big believer in using various breathing techniques to reduce your stress level. Hadn't gotten
Yeah.
into yoga yet. That's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
One
Got to do it,
oldest
man.
daughter. Yeah, got to do it. I know it.
Yeah.
I'm going to get there. I'm going to eventually
Yeah.
find me a yoga class.
That's right.
Okay. We also can't forget about nutrition and the role that it plays in fighting cortisol and reducing those
Mhm.
levels. So we're constantly talking about, healthy nutrition on this show.
Mhm.
So one of the key things that you can consume from a nutrition standpoint, or guess what? Dark leafy greens. So you got to
Yeah.
consume those collards. You got to consume those turnips. You got to consume those mustard greens.
Yeah.
Hey, I need you to eat some spinach. I need you to
Yeah.
eat some kale, some chard. You
Right.
know, all those nutritious dark leafy greens are going to help fight cortisol, help fight stress in your body and combat it naturally, as well as
That's right.
provide you with tons of nutrients and minerals you need to just sustain, a healthy bodily functions. Can't forget
Right.
about avocados, one of those healthy
Yeah.
fats,
Right.
as well as fatty fish like salmon, So these
Mhm.
things help with the cortisol, which causes inflammation, which is what we
Right.
talked about last week. So if you're consuming these foods, guess what? They're going to help reduce that inflammation,
Right.
which naturally will lead to a reduction in higher cortisol levels and help potentially keep them in check.
That's right. And we always talk about regular exercise.
Yes,
That's important too, but you must be careful not to overtrain. Excessive physical stress can also spike those levels as well.
that
So
is true.
remember, consistent, moderate workouts combined with good sleep will help you
Hmm.
recover and keep those cortisol levels down. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And the only thing I'll add on that piece,
Mhm.
so depending on where you are in your life and your career, for guys like Mark and me, hey,
Mhm.
overtraining is a big deal,
Yeah.
So that's why we're promoting moderation. But I know for some of the younger folks out there, they may partake in pushing the limit sometime,
Yeah.
um, and doing what's considered overtraining. And I know there are folks who are advocates or believe in it, saying, hey, you should push the envelope. You should put your
Yeah.
body in some stressful situations, But again, if you balance it with a whole food diet,
Right.
you're consuming healthy and nutritious foods, dark leafy greens, healthy fats, fatty fishes, getting the proper vitamins and minerals in your body. They're going to help combat that stress. So when you are in those overtraining or high
Yeah.
stress type environments, your body naturally has a way to combat it.
Yeah, that's certainly right. That is spot on. You definitely have to have your own process, what feels best for you. Of course, you want to seek any kind of expert opinions and help and also advice. You want to
Yes.
consult with your medical experts before you go out and do anything that's radically
Mm-hmm.
different from what you're currently doing right now. Keeping in mind that, like Luther said, for us, we want longevity. So we're not
Yes.
there, we're not out there trying to squat 400 pounds or anything like that. Those days have passed me by.
Come and gone. Come and gone.
Right. That's right. And my hat's off to all those people who still can do that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But my word of caution is that, as we all get older, there's certain things that you just are not able to do the same way. So, and I believe, and correct me if you think differently, Luther, that's where the technique and your process is really, really coming to play as we get older. If you're doing those exercises, you would rather do them with the best technique you possibly can, the best form and the best way of doing them than trying to be in the gym like you used to when you're maybe much younger and you're just throwing the weights up there, just getting it done, counting out the reps and everything. Now I think it's being very meticulous and methodical about how you're working out and what muscle groups you're really trying to target, right?
Yeah. Hey, so if you're young folks and you're listening to this show
Yeah.
right now, hey, take Mark's word to heed.
Yeah.
Because again, we learn
Yeah.
through our experiences. We learned that, hey, you just can't go in the gym and start slinging weight improperly
Hmm.
just because it's heavy and you see other people lifting heavy, you want to
Yeah.
lift heavy. Hey, it's all about proper form,
Right.
good in the technique, understanding the proper way, to lift a particular weight, whether it's a barbell, a dumbbell, or cables, to target the particular muscle that you're trying to target. So can't overemphasize the importance of good form and technique. And it really doesn't take a lot of heavy weights to get there. I'm not
That's right.
saying you don't need to stress your body if you're trying to grow your muscles,
Right.
because muscle development is definitely critical. It even becomes more
Hmm.
important as you get older in life.
Yeah.
But hey, here's another insider tip. The sooner you start building and developing those muscles,
Hmm.
it's going to help you in the longer run. So it takes
Absolutely.
longer for those muscles to atrophy if you start
Hmm.
out with muscles vice waiting until you're at the middle of your life,
Right.
and you're trying to figure out what's going on, and then all of a sudden, hey, the doctor says, well, maybe you should start some strength training. So
Right.
again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. Folks in the military already know this. They are strength training. They are working their cardiovascular
Hmm.
um, areas as well. So they're taking a balanced approach. Last tip that's tied to cortisol is sleep. Can't
Yeah.
overemphasize the importance of getting good quality sleep.
That's
I
right.
know it can be hard in Squadron Command. It's extremely challenging because that phone rings 24/7. You are
Yeah.
truly on call. I mean, we
Yes.
just got countless stories of, hey, we've been woken up at 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning,
Right.
on multiple times in the same night, for issues that are happening within a squadron, and that just comes with the job. So try to get as much good quality sleep as you can as you're, working through Squadron Command.
Absolutely. And don't forget to hydrate, right? Hydrate, hydrate,
Yes,
hydrate.
absolutely,
For
absolutely.
sure. Luther, I mean, it's always a pleasure chatting with you about all these
Yes.
different things and our experiences in command. Everything is always on spot when you give that information. And hopefully, those folks out there will be utilizing this and not
Yeah.
waiting till they're halfway through their command to, look at one of the first couple of things that we said, like
Hmm.
today. That's a wrap for today's episode. And as mentioned, we certainly hope that you found this discussion very insightful and impactful, and stepping into that squadron command role, we understand it's a huge responsibility. We've both done it before. We've both commanded at various levels, of course. Dealing with the challenges of leadership will never go away. It's been that way since the beginnings of militaries throughout the world. So
Yes.
there's always going to be the challenges, right? We're always
Yep.
going to have to face that, And Luther, I definitely want you to get the last word because you're always the architect. You're the one that puts these concepts together. And I
Yeah.
definitely don't give you enough thanks while we're on air to say thank you so much for developing this content that we're talking about today. It's phenomenal as always, and I certainly do appreciate it, my friend.
Hey, my pleasure. This has been an awesome conversation today. I'm looking forward to the next two parts in this series. We're going to spread it out across
Yeah.
a 4-part series. So hopefully the next 2 episodes, we're going to finish up the Commander series and then we'll shift gears into some other topics. But hey, if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe to the podcast. Again, if you're an audio listener, you can find it on every platform that's out there where podcasts are available. We're on Apple, we're on Spotify, we're on Amazon, and we're on iHeartRadio. So just check us out. Hey, and guess what? We are now officially on YouTube. So if you're a video person, if you're watching this podcast, hey, congratulations. You found us on YouTube. But check us out again, Out of the Wild Blue Yonder. That's our handle on YouTube. Hey, if you have any comments, suggestions, topics you want us to cover, or guess what? Hey, I would love to be a guest on your show. Send us an email at comments@outofthewildblueyonder.com. Lastly, from a social media standpoint, we're currently on X at OOTW Blue Yonder.
Roger that. And I say, until next time, stay motivated and keep pushing forward. And thank you so much for listening today.